And it's morning time in Arad on the 9th day of December.
That's right.
It was sunshine, but it looks like it's gone now, but that's all right. We have a good day here. And
We have sunshine in our apartment. We have sunshine in our hearts.
that's right. And we're talking about light. In verse 3, we were in verse 3. I didn't really cover it all. There's some things that we have to cover about light that I don't think I covered
No, I
last
don't
week.
think so.
Okay, it reads, let there be light, and there was light. So it's assumed by everyone that God created light,
Yeah. It doesn't say he created.
but it doesn't use the word create here.
No.
It says,
Interesting.
allow the light.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the idea of light and darkness. And let's also remember this verse in 45 of Isaiah that says, I am Hashem, the Lord, and there is none else. I form light and create darkness.
Oh.
So when did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, we got to go back. You know, we said that he opened up this space within himself that did not have him in it. It's empty space now. It's a place. This is really quite a remarkable thing that God could do this because he is eternal. To make a space within himself. So what he's done here is create a negative, something that isn't him. He's totally positive. And that is the darkness that he created. That empty space is dark because it's negative.
Is Isaiah saying that there was only light and then he made the darkness in?
Well, then what happens? Because God, now I know there's some scripture in the New Testament that says God is light. But there's another verse, I believe that it's in the Tanakh, and it may be reiterated in the New Testament. It says he lives in unapproachable light.
Right.
That means there's this light, and he's beyond that.
Yeah. Okay.
So he is not the light. The light emanates from him.
Okay.
So how does that happen? Well, we've got this negative that's dark. Now, he inserts, by his spirit. Now, he is spirit.
Yeah.
You can't measure spirit, can you?
No.
It's very difficult to but we do have gas that is unseeable, and we can measure gas, and they can put it into containers that hold it into a certain place. Different gases. Air is put into containers so people get pure air.
Yeah, some people have to have oxygen to live. They have these tanks that they.
So I'm suggesting that God put some of his spirit, not his entire self, back into this space.
No.
Only a measure of spirit that would keep it from diminishing the darkness totally. Okay? So the negative is there, and the positive hits that negative and creates a spark, and that's your Big Bang. That makes or forms the light. This says he formed the light.
Yeah.
That formed the light because of the two things meeting, the negative and the positive. It's like they do that with things in electricity.
Yeah.
And it creates a spark. That's what happened there with the Big Bang. So you immediately have light now, but the darkness tries to put it out because the light, with meeting the darkness, slows the light down and creates matter. And that's how you go from energy, which is light, to matter, things. Okay? The things covered this light so it didn't shine through. I did try to explain that part before,
Yeah.
but I'm explaining it again
Yeah,
to tell
good.
you
It's all right.
so that you understand that light is really there.
Yeah.
It's just been covered over by this stuff. Okay, so that's where we are in Genesis here. I'm using my iPad with Prager's uh, Rational Bible.
Right.
Okay, say. So the let there be light does not mean God created it. Let's keep it that way. But he formed it, as Isaiah 45 says. The scientists who believe in the Bible understand let there be light to mean that God did not create or make light in this verse. He made light appear. So that's what we're dealing with. By this time, water has formed in the universe, which is not the first item that was made.
No.
But all these elements slowing down and creating all this stuff. So now God is hovering over the water and he says, let there be light. Now this light was not the light of the sun. It doesn't mean that the sun wasn't there. It just means that the earth, the density of the atmosphere was so dense that no light could penetrate. And now he's saying, allow the light to come through. Well, we've still got opaque, sort of like Venus. It has this huge cover of gray. It's not completely dark, but it's not, you can't really see the sun there. That's the way the earth was.
But this was all necessary for the rest of creation, for the plants and the animals and for
right.
man.
So it's what we're seeing is a progression, and so we see it, when he said in the beginning or at the start, he was creating. It's an ongoing thing. Now, verse 4 is we don't have the sun yet, as from the earthly perspective. And this is something the Rational Bible points out. When it opens up, we're looking down at things from God's perspective. Now God has come from the earth's perspective when we're looking up. And light is suffusing itself through this muck or the whatever it is that's around the earth. But God saw it was good. That's verse 4. And I want to read what Prager says here because it's very good. The world God created is good and gives all of us who believe in the Bible a reason for optimism. Even when our life is troubled, ultimately world is good and good will eventually prevail. The positive has more power than the negative. The negative is so small compared to who God is that good will prevail. Now, in verse 4, it goes on to say, I want to read this part that he says about God took pleasure in seeing how well his work turned out. This is also a human teaching moment. God's expressing admiration for and taking pleasure in his work.
Yeah. Wow.
This teaches the meaning of humility. Can you believe that? We're seeing something about humility here. If you do good work, meaning the work was good and it was done to achieve good, you are allowed to say you've done good. We are not to be falsely humbled by minimizing, let alone denying our good accomplishments. In other words, that isn't being humble, to minimize what good we've done.
That's a very interesting insight. Yeah.
And he finishes off by saying humility means knowing your strength, but not allowing them to make you arrogant.
That's a
Now, that takes a lot of self-discipline in order to do that. And I wanted just to make this mention. This is a thought I had when I was thinking about this light being formed and the darkness coming against it, is that when God created this empty space, this took self-discipline and control to do something that was not of himself.
Yeah.
And so when we do something good, it also reflects restraining this desire to be arrogant.
Very good.
And puffing up. In fact, in order to have all the positive things that are in God, it takes self-discipline. And it took all God's self-discipline to make something that was not him. And so I think it's almost too profound to even consider thinking about, but it's a good thing to think about. Now, verse 4 says, and God separated the light from darkness. One of the things about the book of Genesis is showing that he created a dual system. And there's chaos when we start out the book. And everything is to separate things so that out of chaos comes order. So the book of Genesis talks about separating and defining things that are opposite. We find it, we'll point that out as we go through, that this is a very important concept, especially nowadays when more and more people are saying we don't want a dual system, we want a mono system. They want everybody to know the same thing, everybody to be equal, everybody to not have sex differentiation, no differentiation here and there.
Gender, you mean?
Well, as far as gender is concerned. Well, they're trying to erase it all kinds of ways. I just saw a program that Prager put out where he sent a guy out to ask people if he had two pictures, one with a man in a dress and one that was in his, like a man dresses. And he says, which one is more masculine? It tells you that he's more masculine. Well, the majority of and these were young people, the majority of them says, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
There was a couple of them that said, well, the masculine one was the one dressed like a man. So these lines the world is trying to fuzz the lines and make it into all a mono thing.
Yeah.
Whereas God created it with a dual system.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that he doesn't want to have at least some duality forever in the universe. It distinguishes the universe apart from himself. So God separated the light from darkness, and he called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. So now we have a discussion of what is day.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't say it's a 24-hour period. We don't have the sun or the moon. At least not visibly. So we are going to describe each day. There was evening, morning was evening. Why days in the Hebrew calendar begin at sunset, not midnight? The weekly Sabbath, for example, commences on Friday evening. So because the darkness was there first before the light hit it. So darkness is first part of day. And light is the rest of the day. So what we have to, some people, this is how they define their 6 days of the week that God created. They want 24-hour days for every single thing. But you can't reconcile science with the dates. The universe is about 14 billion years old with 6 24-hour period. A Dr. Gerald Schroeder, who taught physics at MIT and the Weizmann Institute in Israel, reconciled science and day in Genesis 1 this way. We look back and measure 14 billion years from today back to creation. The Bible looks forward and says 6 days from the beginning, looking forward to Adam. Two views of one reality, both are true, 6 days and 14 billion years. In an expanding universe, they both are mathematically true. That's what I don't understand these scientists and their mathematics, but they got it figured out. I respect the views of religious scientists such as Schroeder and Hugo Ross in astrophysics and postdoctoral research. And I also recognize most readers throughout history understand these days as literal days. This is Prager speaking.
Right.
That a substantial number of believers today continue to do so. I will explain why day in the Hebrew Bible does not necessarily mean 24-hour period. Despite their rejection of science regarding creation, these people should not be dismissed as anti-science. I know some of these people are highly respectful of science. Some of them study science. So, nevertheless, day, which is the word yom in Hebrew, does not mean 24 hours. In the very next chapter of Genesis, the Torah states, these are the generations of the heaven and the earth when they were created on the day God made the earth and the heavens. So, what kind of a day was that? It says it's Yom.
What verse is that?
That's in Genesis 2:4. In that verse alludes to the entirety of God's creating to the world. So in that verse, Yom cannot mean 1 24-hour period. Day in the Bible can mean an indefinite period of time, just as it can when we use the word in English in that day and age, in our day, etc. And the Bible itself later asserts 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. I find those examples persuasive, but I do not ascribe great importance to this particular debate for another reason. What matters is not how long it took God to create the world. What matters is that God created it. What matters is that if there were no God, there would be no world. All existence, not to mention all life, and intelligent life in particular, is a miracle. When I look at the world and recite the words, how great are your works, Lord, how profound your thoughts, it does not occur to me to think about how long it took God to make his great works. Genesis 1 teaches God created the world, not chance. And that's what is really important. So I would like to say that's why I feel this is very true from my perspective, that we can't count them as 24-hour periods, but they're epochs of time in which God did something. And what really matters is that we acknowledge who made it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is so much the way why we can meditate on these first chapters of Genesis and still not think about all the implications and everything that is involved.
Well, understanding the term day helps us to understand why science is able to see how old the Earth is.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that, if we say, well, everything is just a 24-hour period, then we have conflict with science and what they've discovered.
And the ground does tell us something. Records are in the ground.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do
is... You can't just overlook what's in the ground, what the records say. Yeah.
No, and what we're trying to do is understand why things are as they are, and so that we can acknowledge reality.
Yeah.
For me, what is true is important. I may not, I may ascribe to what these scientists say as truth, and later they'll find out something that tweaks it one way or the other. Well, that's okay. That's science. And my faith is that way too. Sometimes I believe something very strongly because it resonates, but then it has to be tweaked later on when something else, some new fact comes to bear.
And even though I don't understand all of the science and what those scientists are doing, I can't just throw it out either. You know?
No. And it makes it interesting, but the idea is to see how wonderful God is.
Yeah. And what you're saying about it, what Prager is saying, actually can strengthen our faith, not weaken it.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of all of this, is that we get to see who God is,
Mm-hmm.
and that He is making things, because He does make,
Yeah.
besides create, He makes things. And it all reflects that none of this can be known if there is not another person that thinks like God. There's nobody to glorify Him.
Mm-hmm.
Animals could go on doing what they do, but they don't think God made me and give Him praise. The sun, moon, and stars praise Him. Well, what does that praise mean? Well, they're doing what He wants them to do. But it's not
there's
think process.
There's a lot of things that happen with animals that reflect on God, that give Him credit, but they don't themselves
know it.
Yeah, and
so to appreciate God, He had to have someone else.
And I think we need to remember that these first few verses are the basis of everything. Everything we have, everything that's happened, everything that's going to happen is the basis for it is right here.
Yeah, exactly. It's foundational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even the words that He speaks. Mm-hmm. I had so many thoughts about all of this as I was when I wasn't sleeping.
Watch out when
and I thought to myself,
when a demon doesn't sleep, watch out.
We can't talk about that yet. We'll come to it, but it all alludes back to what we've discussed this morning. So we'll close for now, and we'll look at verse 5 next week.
Okay.